Welcome, villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I'm your guide, All Kage, the creator and author of all the what-if stories you see on this channel, with your awesome suggestions, of course. I write, edit, and produce every story you hear, so if you're wondering who made it, it's me. I hope you enjoy today's video. Be sure to leave your what-if ideas in the comments and subscribe if you're new. Today's story is, What If Naruto Was in Ben 10 Part 3. If you'd like to support the channel, check out my Patreon, link in the description. For just $5, you can get early access to full-text transcripts, thumbnails, ad-free videos, and updates for my what-ifs. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this what-if. Part 3, The Kraken. The moonlight shimmered over the quiet lake, casting silver reflections that danced on the ripples just past the edge of the rust bucket's shadow. The night air was humid, thick with the scent of pine and damp soil. Naruto sat on a log a few feet from the RV, fingers twitching around a mess of wires, scrap plating, and the glowing core of the orange robot they'd fought days ago. He squinted at the flickering symbols now appearing on his laptop screen, still indecipherable, alien, complex. He'd been feeding the thing into his tech for over a day now. Max said the system might crack the language in another 24 hours. Hopefully, until then, he had time to kill. Time to train. He sighed, reached behind him, and unrolled an old scroll from his travel bag, the same one Jiraiya had given him. One of the last pieces of home he hadn't burned, lost, or outgrown. The paper was torn near the edge, a blood-stained wrinkle along the binding. Naruto's brows lowered. That wasn't new, it must have gotten damaged right before he left, he hadn't opened it in months. He flipped through the pages anyway, scanning seals, notes, chakra patterns, then he stopped. A tear ran straight through the section on Earth release. Another across wind-based clones, ink blurred into brownish smears where blood had soaked through. The rest wasn't salvageable either. TCH, Naruto rolled the scroll shut, tighter than necessary. He didn't throw it, but the thought crossed his mind. There went that plan. A wedge in his own progress, placed months ago by a decision he could never take back. That scroll had been a fallback, a part of the old him. But this world didn't care about shadow clones or summoning contracts, he had to adapt. Still seated, he stared down at his hands. They looked clean under the moonlight, but they felt heavier than they had earlier. No elemental scrolls, no new jutsu, nothing left to learn but what he could teach himself. His thoughts circled in silence, then they landed on the one thing that still made sense. That night in Bellwood. The crimson energy pulsing from his palm. His chakra was different now, unstable in some ways, but alive, raw. He breathed in slowly and focused, inhaling deeper. He felt the familiar tug of power just beneath his ribs. The separation wasn't a technique, it was instinct now. A survival trait, something born from the Nine Tails' absence and whatever else the tailed beast left behind in him. Physical energy, spiritual energy, each one held unique pressure. Alone, neither could form proper ninjutsu. But together, they made chakra. If he split them, they manifested as something else entirely. Maybe it wasn't about having dozens of jutsu anymore. Maybe it was about sharpening what remained until nothing could touch him. Naruto pulled back his palm and let the physical energy surge through it. He shaped it. Just like the Rasengan. His other hand steadied it, spiraling. Compressing, flaring red. When he opened his eyes, the orb pulsed in the center of his hand, burning crimson and crackling at the edges like a dying star. Unlike the traditional Rasengan, this one tugged at the air around it, a faint suction, like it was trying to consume. Physically, it felt hot, but his spirit, it felt like something deeper was being drawn into the core. Like it could tear something apart more than explode it. Not just destruction, consumption. He held it for a second longer, then dispelled it with a sharp breath. It's all chakra control, he muttered under his breath. Same base, different shape. It made sense, the Rasengan was already a pure chakra technique. This was just a variation. Still, if he wanted to use that crimson chakra effectively, if he wanted to shape it into more than just a blunt weapon, he'd have to control it with surgical precision. Naruto groaned and leaned back, letting his head tilt toward the sky. Figures, he mumbled. Years of training in Konoha and it was all chakra control, now it's all I've got left. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the quiet of the night settle around him. Then, snap. His body tensed. A subtle shift in the trees. Just past the edge of the clearing, a few leaves disturbed. Too clean to be wind, too soft for Max or Ben's usual steps. He was on his feet before he realized it, silent, controlled. His eyes sharpened. Hands low, posture defensive, not human, his instincts whispered, or if it was, it didn't move like one. The scroll was forgotten now, his senses shifted entirely into focus, no sounds from the RV. Just the lake, the night insects, and that faint presence beyond the trees. His chakra flared softly in his fingertips, not enough to spark light, but enough to prepare. If something was watching. It picked the wrong night. The wind shifted again. Naruto didn't need to look, he felt it before it happened. A sudden weight in the air. The quiet thump of someone landing on solid ground. Just ahead of him, between moonlight and shadow, a figure emerged. Slim, deliberate, and clothed in the dark-stitched armor of a Konoha Anbu, chestplate fitted to a lean frame, black and gray flak jacket layered beneath a black cloak that caught the breeze. The pale white of a porcelain cat mask stared blankly back at him, delicate red lines painted along the edges, stylized like whiskers. She stood still, spine straight, arms relaxed but ready. Pink hair spilled from behind the mask in a tight knot, though the ends fluttered freely near her shoulders. A few inches shorter than him, but he knew this presence. The chakra, the posture. His hand clenched unconsciously. No way. A breath caught in his chest. He hadn't seen her in years, hadn't planned to ever see her again. Sakura, he muttered with a scowl, the name falling out sharp. His brows lowered, mouth tight, anger crept up his neck like a rising tide. But the masked figure didn't flinch, she tilted her head slightly, then responded flatly. "It's Cat, now." Her voice was calm, detached, the same voice that used to scold him and call him an idiot, but stripped of warmth. Polished into something cleaner, shinobi grade. Naruto's eyes narrowed. 4 days since school started. 3 since he used his first Rasengan in nearly 3 years, and they already found him. So much for running. His mind turned over fast, but not fast enough to suppress the bitter taste building in his chest. Sakura broke the silence first. "It's been a while." He scoffed under his breath, "Don't talk to me like we're friends." The words hit like stones, he didn't care if they landed or not. He had waited too long, lost too much to hear that voice speak like nothing had happened. "I was done with the village when I brought Sasuke back." His tone sharpened. "You remember that, don't you, when the council wanted me executed, hung publicly, for dragging him back broken instead of dead, like they told me to?" He stepped forward once, jaw tight, rage crackling beneath his skin. "And you ridiculed me, mocked me, said I failed, that I should have known better. That I didn't try hard enough to bring him back whole, when I should have killed him and been done with it." His voice shook slightly, not from weakness, but restraint. The part of him that still tried to stay calm. Sasuke was a prick. Consumed by power. If I wasn't so damn loyal, if I didn't mistake it for friendship, he would have been in the ground. He exhaled hard through his nose. Jiraiya was the only one who helped me, got me out of that circus of a prosecution. Tsunade tried, but it was too late by then. Silence. For a moment, neither moved. Then Sakura, or Cat, spoke again. Voice level. "That doesn't matter now." She took one step forward. "I've found you, and I was told to only speak if the suspicions were true. Naruto's gaze burned through the mask, then spit it out. She hesitated. For the first time, something flickered in her posture, then she spoke. Lord Sixth wants you to return to Konoha. She didn't sugarcoat it. Without our Jinchuriki, the village looks weak. Naruto's expression darkened instantly, his fists clenched. So the secret was out. He shook his head once, scoffing, LSO, they finally told everyone what I was. Guess keeping it quiet didn't matter after all. Sakura didn't argue. She just added, before we use force. I've been ordered to give you a choice. To move on peacefully, to come home. A pause. And with my own words, Naruto. Her voice softened for the first time since she arrived. I think you should come back, it's not the same without you, you were our number one knuckle-headed ninja. Naruto flinched, not visibly, but deep inside something coiled. He shook his head. Stop, he said quietly. Just stop. His voice was low, flat, there was no venom, only emptiness. And just like that, her mask of warmth cracked and fell away, her voice turned ice-cold again. I thought that would have worked. She reached up slowly, fingers gripping the side of her mask, and pulled it free. Sakura looked older now, sharper, her features refined, softer in some places, harder in others. Her hair was longer, messier than it used to be, a few strands falling in front of her face. The red gloves on her hands were worn at the edges, her eyes more hollow than he remembered. She stared at him, no tears, no smile. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, she said quietly. But even if you're forced back, I'll be fine. I have everything I need back home. She looked off for a second before locking eyes with him again. I don't care about you, not really, not anymore. But I do respect you, and I'm telling you, it's dangerous not to come back peacefully. Her voice held no threat. Just certainty. Then, without another word, she turned and walked into the shadows of the trees, vanishing into the dark. Naruto watched her go. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't chase. Only once she was gone did he let out a breath and lower his gaze, thoughts crashing over him like cold rain. He stood there a while longer, giving the forest one final glare. Then, finally, he exhaled, long and quiet. TCH, he turned, back toward the RV, back toward the road, back toward whatever future he could carve for himself, far from the ghosts still clinging to Konoha. Naruto sat down slowly, elbows on his knees, hands hanging loose, his body still warm from the chase and the tension from the conversation. Sakura's words hadn't just faded, they clung to his thoughts like a fog. They found me in 4 days, 4 days since my first Rasengan in 3 years. Half a week, that's all it took. The timeline didn't add up unless someone had been watching, tracking, waiting. Her words echoed, I think you should come back, it's not the same without you, even if you're forced back, I have everything I need at home. He scoffed quietly, sure you do, maybe she thought that was mercy. Honesty, even, but it felt like dismissal, the kind of cold truth people say after they've long since let you go. Sakura hadn't changed, not where it mattered. Naruto leaned back on his hands and stared up at the sky, the weight of it all sinking in. If they were already sending ANBU after him, even under the guise of peace, then time was shorter than he thought. And if they weren't afraid to tell the village what he was, or rather what he used to be, they weren't afraid to use him again either. He'd fought so hard to avoid being a tool, a weapon, a burden. A breath left him, not quite a sigh, not quite calm. Then the bench shifted. He turned his head slightly to see Gwen dropping beside him with a huff, arms crossed, seaweed still clinging to her ponytail. Her brows were furrowed, cheeks puffed in frustration, and she didn't say anything for a second. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You good? He asked, voice casual, but kind. Your little brother, Gwen muttered darkly, thought it would be funny to sneak up on me dressed in seaweed. As 4 arms. Naruto blinked, then a small chuckle escaped before he caught himself. Gwen snapped her head toward him, eyes narrowing like a hawk. It was just a harmless prank, he said, holding up his hands. I know, she sighed, pulling seaweed from her shoulder. It's not that, I guess I just thought, this kind of stuff would stop eventually, we'd grow out of it. Ben's just having fun, Naruto said. Even with everything going on, watch drama, killer science freaks, mutant birds. He's still got energy, still grinning. Gwen looked away, lips pressing into a line. Her expression shifted, less annoyed, more uncertain. He gets to be carefree, she said. I'm just always the one who's left dealing with the cleanup. Or the planning, or the worrying. Naruto tilted his head, watching her. Maybe he leans on you more than he lets on. I don't want to be leaned on, I want to be listened to, she exhaled. I don't need to be the uptight one all the time. There was a quiet moment, then Naruto bumped her shoulder lightly with his. I could help, even the score a little, teach you some tricks. I was a prank master back when I was 13. You, really, she said, glancing at him, the corners of her lips twitched. Oh yeah, he grinned. Trip wires, chalk bombs, paint traps, I had this one that involved hot sauce, a frog, and a fake confession letter. That sounds like a lawsuit. Totally worth it. He smirked. Besides, I said I'd help you train, right? Pranks are just the warm-up. Alien danger, rogue scientists, and weirdos with mammoths, you need something more than just a snarky comeback. She tilted her head, still trying to make me a weapon? Maybe, he said, tone softening. I'm also trying to make sure you're not left behind if things get worse. Her expression faltered, but she looked away quickly. Max can handle himself, Naruto went on, even for a plumber, with the run-ins we've had, he's definitely been able to hold his own. Gwen pulled at the last strand of seaweed from her sleeve, her hands suddenly still. Okay, she said. I'll train with you, but on one condition. He turned to her. You have to help me prank Ben first. Naruto's grin spread wide. You got straight to business, he said with a laugh. A blush rose in Gwen's cheeks, but she kept her eyes forward. My cousin might be the childish one, she muttered, but I want to have some fun this summer too. Something in that hit Naruto unexpectedly hard. She wasn't just annoyed, she was trying. Trying to enjoy this, trying to keep up, and maybe she didn't even realize how much pressure she was under. He stared at her for a second longer than he meant to, then looked away as heat crawled up his neck. I can come up with something good, he said, covering the shift in tone. But I'll wag I know tomorrow when I can. Gwen glanced at him through her lashes and smiled. It was subtle, but warm, like she was starting to see something in him she hadn't before. Naruto didn't notice, or maybe, he didn't want to. Instead, he stood and stretched. All right, he said, brushing imaginary dust off his pants. Operation Ben Trickery is a go. Gwen stood too, nudging him with her elbow. You're supposed to be my mentor, not a co-conspirator. I can multitask. And as they walked back toward the RV, closer than before, more in sync, Gwen laughed softly beside him. Naruto's mind drifted only for a moment, back to Sakura's words, back to the weight of being found again, but then he looked at Gwen. Her hair still a little tangled from the bird chase. Her cheeks still a little red from the sun. Her eyes clearer than anything he'd seen in a long time. And for now, that was enough. Gwen stirred awake to a faint chirping outside the rust bucket. The soft hush of lake water brushing the shore mixed with the distant hum of cicadas. She blinked up at the ceiling, groggy and unsure what had woken her exactly. It wasn't Ben snoring for once. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. The sun hadn't even fully risen yet, the light filtering through the RV's curtains was still cold and blue. Yawning, she glanced toward the makeshift curtain that split Naruto's space from the rest of theirs. Empty. Gwen frowned slightly, tugging on her navy blue sweater as she stepped down quietly. He's up already, that wasn't too surprising. Naruto didn't seem like the type to sleep in, still, something about it nagged at her, enough that her feet were already slipping into her sneakers. Not that she was worried or anything, of course not, she just wanted to know what he was doing out there this early, strictly curiosity, that was it. She told herself that again as she stepped out into the cool morning air. The forest wasn't far, just a short walk along the edge of the lake, where the mist still clung to the grass and the birds hadn't started their full choir. She followed the faint sound of running water. There was a waterfall nearby. Small and quiet, like a secret tucked into the trees, that's where she found him. Naruto was running up the falls. Literally running, up, the falls. Gwen paused, hidden behind a tree, her breath caught in her throat. He was shirtless, sweat glistening on his skin as he focused on his steps, chakra spiraling beneath his feet in soft pulses. It was mesmerizing. Every movement was sharp, practiced, controlled, like he wasn't just training his body, but anchoring his mind to something bigger. She swallowed. It's not like I'm staring, she told herself, it's just, she wasn't sure what it was. Naruto landed gracefully near the edge, his breath steady, back rising and falling. He turned slightly, then froze, his head shifted toward the trees. You gonna keep hiding, or are you planning on ambushing me? Gwen stepped out with a small huff, arms crossed. I wasn't hiding, just watching, then, realizing how that sounded, she quickly added, not like that, I just didn't want to interrupt. Naruto raised an eyebrow, a half-grin tugging at the corner of his mouth as he walked over to where she stood, casually tugging his shirt on over his head. Sure, early morning stroll just happened to lead you into the forest where I'm training? Gwen scoffed, not harshly, but flustered, I was just curious where you went. It's weird waking up and not finding you at the rust bucket. That's all. His smile softened a little, fair enough. There was a pause, the breeze picking up between them, rustling the leaves. So, Gwen said, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Are you gonna teach me that prank now, or do I have to sit through another waterfall ninja session first? Naruto's grin returned, only if you train with me after. She rolled her eyes, again, not annoyed, but more of a you're impossible kind of look. Figures. He stepped over to a rock and picked up a canteen, sipping before continuing. I mean, it's a good trade, you get revenge on Ben, I get someone who can keep up while I work on chakra control. Gwen tilted her head slightly. Still working on control, you make it look pretty easy. Naruto shook his head, it's not that simple, I hit a wall, the scroll I used to train with, it's damaged, bloodstained actually. Can't learn anything else from it, his voice dropped slightly, eyes flicking down as he added, so now I'm stuck teaching myself, or making new jutsu from scratch. She blinked, you can make jutsu? Anyone can, he said, folding his arms. But most shinobi rely on what's already written, I don't really have that option anymore. Gwen hesitated before speaking, her voice quieter this time. That sounds, kind of lonely. Naruto shrugged, not the first time I've had to figure things out alone. There was a quiet beat between them again. Gwen studied him, how his jaw tensed when he was thinking, how his tone softened slightly when he talked about his past, even when he tried to brush it off. She didn't know everything he'd been through, but something told her the loneliness part wasn't new. Well, she said, stepping a little closer, you're not totally alone anymore. Naruto looked at her. She cleared her throat quickly, I mean, with me and Ben and Grandpa. We're a team, right? You've got people now. He stared for a moment longer than she expected, then offered a small, genuine smile, yeah, I do. And just like that, the moment passed. Gwen nudged his shoulder lightly. Now come on, sensei, teach me how to prank my cousin. Naruto chuckled, shaking his head. Alright, alright. But I warn you, I was a menace when I was 13. If I teach you my ways, you'll be unstoppable. That's the plan, she said with a smirk, but inside, she was already feeling a little unsteady. And maybe, just maybe, a little more drawn to him than she was ready to admit. By the time the sun had fully crested above the trees, Gwen had already laughed more than she had in days. Naruto's prank lesson turned out to be surprisingly intricate. Like a war veteran casually mapping a battlefield, he'd walked her through everything from rigging paint bombs under loose rocks to stuffing whoopee cushions beneath car cushions without leaving a trace. His hands moved with practiced ease, his grin widening every time one of her setups misfired and splattered harmless color onto herself. Too much tension in the wrist, he teased as she wiped red paint from her elbow. I'm tense because this is ridiculous, she grumbled, but there was no real bite to her tone. If anything, she was enjoying it more than she'd admit. But within an hour or two, something shifted. Their laughter faded into a quiet hum of the forest again, and Naruto stood a little straighter, his tone turning from playful to focused. Alright, he said, clapping his hands once. We've pranked Ben enough for one morning, let's get serious. Gwen stood opposite him now on a soft patch of grass, just out of sight from the rust bucket. The trees surrounded them in a loose ring of shade, but a shaft of sunlight fell right between them. It felt like some kind of weird training montage moment, only she was pretty sure no montage ever included a ninja circling her like a predator assessing its prey. She straightened her spine, trying to ignore how much her pulse had picked up. This is normal, this is fine. And yet, Naruto's gaze was sharp, analytical. His blue eyes flicked over her arms, her posture, her stance. There wasn't anything inappropriate about it. He wasn't leering or acting weird, but the way he looked at her made her feel like he saw more than just muscle and balance. Like he could see everything she tried not to show. He stepped around behind her, arms folded, then circled back again before crouching slightly to examine her legs. Huh, he muttered. Your muscle density's more developed than I expected. Do you already practice a style? His head tilted, still focused on her lower half, and it took exactly 2 seconds before he blinked, clearly realizing how it looked. He straightened suddenly. I meant like, your leg strength. That's not a weird thing to notice, I swear. Gwen couldn't help it, she laughed. I figured, she said, though her cheeks burned with a rush of embarrassment. Her thoughts, however, were less charitable. Great. That wasn't weird at all, just a cute guy crouching near my legs, analyzing my thighs. Totally fine, totally normal. She swallowed that spiral down with a breath and said, I did karate for a few years, started when I was 10, black belt by last winter. Guess that's something? Naruto looked impressed. That's good, that's really good, actually, means you've already got control, discipline, and muscle memory. So I won't mess with the core of your style. I'll just show you how to enhance it with chakra, add more power, reinforce your stance, and eventually, weapon integration. Why not teach me a new style completely? Gwen asked, crossing her arms. Naruto shrugged, because I don't really have one. I was never taught a clean-cut style like that. Just hand-to-hand, street fighting, brawling, but refined. Shinobi learned to be unpredictable. Most of the stuff I use is a mix of instinct and experience. He hesitated, glancing at her form again, then sighed. And to be honest, a lot of what I was taught wouldn't suit you. She frowned. Why not? There was another pause, and Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, visibly awkward. Because of your, bust. Gwen glanced down at her chest and sighed quietly. Yeah, they're not exactly small. She knew she was filling out faster than some girls her age, not huge or anything, just enough to be noticeable. Enough to get comments like that. Not his fault, she told herself. Still, her cheeks warmed. Just, wish they didn't make training awkward sometimes. Wow, she muttered under her breath. Naruto immediately raised his hands. I'm not saying that like, it's not bad, it's just, some moves restrict upper body movement, and if you already have a style that works around your body type, it's smarter to build off that than to force something new. She stared at him. He looked genuinely embarrassed, his mouth tight, his eyes everywhere but on her chest now. Gwen let out a laugh she didn't mean to. "You're seriously bad at this." "Bad at what?" he asked, genuinely confused, talking about girls' bodies without sounding like you're in a health class. She grinned, despite the mortification bubbling in her stomach. The truth, she wasn't upset, not even close. Just deeply aware of the way he saw her, and maybe a little glad he noticed her, even if his wording could use work. Naruto groaned, covering his face. "I walked right into that one." "Yup," she gave him a teasing push with her foot. "But it's fine, I get what you meant." He dropped his hands and smiled sheepishly. "Cool, anyway, wanna show me what you've got, just something simple, so I can see how you move." Gwen exhaled slowly, rolling her shoulders. She slipped into her usual stance, feet spaced, hands open and loose. "Alright," she said, lips tugging into a confident smirk. "But don't blame me if you can't keep up." As she lunged forward into the first spar, there was still a flutter in her chest, but this time, it wasn't just from adrenaline. Naruto's stance was something else. Feet wide, weight evenly distributed, torso turned slightly to the side. His arms were crossed over his chest in a way that looked relaxed, but Gwen could feel the readiness behind it. The right hand floated forward, palm open and steady, while the left stayed behind, rotated downward, more like a coiled spring than a block. A stance built for offense and defense all at once. Gwen immediately understood why he'd made that comment earlier. That kind of stance would have been a mess on her. Her chest would have thrown off the balance. She glanced down with a soft, private sigh. Guess that was what Naruto meant, not an insult, just anatomy. Still, it was weird how conscious it made her feel. "Well," Naruto asked, tilting his head. "You attacking, or what?" That snapped her back. "Right, yeah, you said this is my training." She tightened her fists, centered herself. Then she lunged. Her karate training kicked in instinctively, sharp, fluid, powerful. Gwen opened with a feint to his left side, before twisting her hips and launching a heavy front kick toward his ribs. She followed with a short series of fast jabs, her body moving with practiced grace, trying to anticipate the blonde's movements. But Naruto was chaos in motion, where her style followed discipline and order, his was all instinct and unpredictability. Every time she came close, he shifted out of reach, bending at odd angles, spinning around her, brushing aside her momentum like wine through branches. One moment he blocked with the back of his hand, the next he ducked low and let her strikes pass inches from his face. Her grapples failed, not because she wasn't strong enough, but because she couldn't pin him. He was always moving, always turning her strength against her, just out of step enough to confuse her timing. Gwen growled under her breath, dropping low for a sweep, but Naruto jumped effortlessly, flipping over her leg and landing with a casual roll behind her. She turned, panting slightly. That, she muttered, was infuriating. Naruto laughed lightly, hands behind his head. "You're not bad, really, you're strong and smart, but you're still playing by the rules your style gave you, that's your biggest flaw." Gwen stood straight again, brushing her hair out of her face. Meaning, Naruto said, walking up and poking her lightly in the shoulder, "You're predictable. Grapples and kicks work, sure, but against someone like me, or worse, you're gonna need a mix of everything: strikes, misdirection, flow, unpredictability." Gwen frowned. "So, change styles completely?" He shook his head. "No, karate's a good base, and with your natural strength, it works well. But you need to loosen it up, make it yours, stop fighting like your instructors and start fighting like Gwen." That actually made a lot of sense. "And what's this about using all my muscle?" she asked, curious now. Naruto grinned. "Well, your brain holds back some of your muscle power, for safety, mostly. But with proper control, you can tap into more of it, not all at once, that'd hurt you, but in bursts, it adds impact. Gwen crossed her arms. Isn't that, I don't know, dangerous? Totally, Naruto said without missing a beat. If you're reckless, but I'm not gonna let you be reckless, I'll teach you to control it, fine muscle control, no chakra needed. Gwen blinked, no chakra? He shrugged, can't teach you that, you'd need to unlock it when you're younger. And from what I can tell, your chakra pool's small, real small. Even if I did try, it wouldn't be enough to use for combat. That stung more than she thought it would. Her gaze dropped for a moment. Oh. But, Naruto added quickly, gently knocking his knuckles against her arm, you don't need chakra to be strong. What I'm gonna teach you, it's simple, powerful, and it's all you. That made her smile again. Oh, and I've been thinking, he said, glancing at the pile of scrap metal nearby. Once I'm done with that junk, I'll make your weapon a bow staff. Long reach, versatile, and it suits your style, you'll love it. Gwen's eyes lit up. Seriously? Naruto nodded. You'll be the strongest one in the family next to me in no time. Her chest warmed at the praise. Later, as they walked back toward the rust bucket, Gwen's thoughts drifted again. Her legs ached slightly, but it was a satisfying ache, earned, not forced. Breakfast was being made inside already, and Naruto was telling her about the first prank he ever pulled on Jiraiya, something involving paint and bathhouses. But Gwen barely heard it. She looked at him, walking ahead with his hands behind his head, blonde hair catching the sunlight, a carefree grin still tugging at his lips. She smiled quietly. Yeah, she was glad he was here. The early sun peeked over the ridgeline, low and hazy, painting streaks of soft gold over the lake's glassy surface. Mist clung to the water like a second skin, shifting lazily with the breeze. Pine trees loomed on the far side, their reflections quivering with every ripple. The dock creaked underfoot as the group made their way toward the old fishing boat waiting near the end. Naruto walked just behind the others, laptop tucked under one arm, a weathered box of scrap metal and torn wires balanced in the other. It was finally time to dig deeper into the truth behind the watch, and hopefully, find something useful buried in the alien data they'd been collecting. The weight of it all sat just beneath his skin. Answers always came slowly, but now, they were at least coming. Max led the way, both arms loaded with fishing gear, rods, a sun-faded tackle box, and a bucket full of bait he swore by. Rented the boat last night, he explained over his shoulder. Old guy by the name of Shaw been taking folks out on this lake since before I had gray hair. Ben wasn't listening. I swear I saw it last night, he burst out, practically skipping beside Gwen. Right in front of me in the water, big shadow. Glowing eyes, splashed like a torpedo hitting the water. Gwen rolled her eyes, arms crossed. You sure it wasn't just you? I'm not falling for your pranks again, Ben. She laughed it off. Max chuckled. You've got quite the imagination, Ben. Ben shot them both a look, then turned toward Naruto. You believe me, don't you? I'm not crazy. Naruto's gaze drifted to the edge of the lake, thoughtful. I've seen enough to know what we call crazy usually turns out to be real, or close enough. He adjusted the box under his arm. I'm not saying it's a sea monster, but I'm not saying it's not either. I'll keep a lookout. Ben grinned, satisfied. That's all I needed to hear. They walked a few steps more before Gwen tilted her head. Wait, why are we out here again? Max didn't break stride. Fishing, this lake's perfect for it, quiet, deep waters, barely a current, not to mention the trout practically jump into your hands. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Ben, excited to sit still and wait for fish, that's new. Ben shrugged, clearly trying to play it cool. Hey, it's not about the fishing. If that monster's out there, I'm gonna be the one to see it. Naruto smiled faintly, thought as much. They neared the boat, an old, weather-worn vessel bobbing gently in the water. The captain, a grizzled man with sunburned cheeks and a wide straw hat, nodded at their approach. The dock groaned under their combined steps as Max started loading the supplies onto the deck. Then Gwen spoke again, this time clearly, directly to Max. "I think I'll stay behind. Naruto still needs help decoding everything from that robot that attacked us when the watch first appeared. It's important." Max looked back, a little surprised, his eyes flicked between her and Naruto before his lips curled into a knowing smile. "All right then, but don't say I didn't offer you the better view." Gwen's lips quirked into a faint smile. She murmured under her breath, "I think I already have it." Naruto didn't catch what she said, as oblivious as ever. Max and Ben climbed aboard, the boat shifting with their weight as the captain started untying the lines. The soft putter of the engine began as the boat pulled away from the dock, leaving behind a fading trail of ripples. Naruto turned, settling the scrap box down near the edge where the wood was dry. Gwen knelt beside him, brushing her hair over one shoulder, already eyeing the laptop screen. The lake stretched out ahead, the sun glinting off the water like coins scattered in the wind, but for now, their story would stay right here, between the rustle of wires and the flicker of alien code. Naruto set the laptop down on a dry patch of dock as Gwen pulled her legs beneath her, watching curiously but not saying anything yet. The box of scrap creaked slightly as he rummaged through it, fingers brushing past old metal joints and a half-melted processor before finding what he was looking for. A scroll, old and weathered. Not one from home, this was something he'd made himself, sealed and reinforced with chakra just before they'd left the desert. He unraveled it with one smooth tug, the soft snap of parchment stretching out echoing faintly over the still water. With a practiced motion, he pressed his palm to one of the inked seals. A sudden puff of smoke burst upward. When it cleared, the remains of the robot they'd fought days ago, its scorched chassis, cracked head unit, and twisted joints, rested on the dock in front of them. Its single optic flickered faintly, a dying ember of energy clinging to life. He pulled a few cables from his bag and slid open a port in the back of the head. The metal was jagged where he had blasted through it, but it was enough. A few quick clicks later, the robot was linked to his laptop through a thick data line. "The language has already been cracked," Naruto muttered, mostly to himself. "Took long enough." The screen came to life with a soft green glow, code flooding across it like a waterfall. Gwen leaned over to peek but didn't interrupt. She'd learned by now when to wait for him to talk. Naruto's fingers danced across the keys, filtering, decrypting, backtracking, until a line of alien text appeared in bold across the center of the screen. Then the translator kicked in. "Project, Omnitrix." He narrowed his eyes. "Retrieve target upon atmospheric entry. Priority Alpha." He paused. "Time-stamped, 5 years ago." Gwen's brow furrowed, 5 years, but Ben just found it. "Exactly," Naruto said, sitting back on his heels. "Which means it was here a while before he touched it, just sitting out there. Waiting." He nodded slowly. The next line caught his attention, a file path. Naruto followed it, fingers moving fast now. Another loading bar. Another stream of text. Words appeared, a map, diagrams of the watch, then, species profiles, energy signatures. Notes on atmospheric adaptation, form stabilization, DNA syncing, and then, a count, 10. Naruto stared. "There's only 10 listed," he muttered. "The ones Ben's turned into so far." Gwen leaned closer. "Wait, that's all?" "No," Naruto pointed to a subtext window. "Those are just the ones active. Hold on," he clicked again, pulling open another window. It lagged under the data weight, then flickered to life. "Species available, 1,984,562,307. Gwen's jaw dropped. "Wait, billion, that's a lot." Naruto didn't answer at first, he was scrolling now, faster than her eyes could follow. "It's not just a tool, this thing's a library, a walking database of universal biology." The next section was Messier, fragmented logs, broken code, half-corrupted transmissions. But even there, pieces stuck out, references to something called the plums, the middle part of the word was gone. A war over genetic access rights, entire civilizations fighting for the right to claim, or destroy, the watch. And a name, half-scratched from the logs. Vilg, the rest was missing. Naruto leaned back, exhaling through his nose. So much for it being just some weird alien toy. Gwen was quiet beside him. He could feel her gaze. Do we tell Ben? Naruto glanced over at her, thoughtful. Not yet, he's already got a lot riding on him. No point dropping the weight of the universe on his shoulders before breakfast. She didn't argue with that. Naruto closed the laptop slowly, letting the fan inside spin down with a faint whir. The water lapped gently against the dock. Birds had started calling from the trees behind them. Somewhere out in the mist, Max's boat was just a shadow drifting past the lake's surface. Naruto stared out at the water, mind working a mile a minute. Who sent the robot? Why wait 5 years, and more than that, who else might already know that the watch was no longer lost? He didn't like the answers that came to mind. Not one bit. The air was warm, stirred by a lazy breeze drifting off the lake. Distant birds chirped into the morning haze while the dock creaked under shifting weight. Naruto clicked his laptop shut, the glow from the screen vanishing as he leaned back against a wooden post. The head of the robot sat idle beside him, wires still faintly pulsing where they connected to his machine. All that info, downloaded. Locked tight in his system. Some of it useful. Some of it, well, stuff he'd need to unpack later. Alright, Naruto said, exhaling through his nose as he leaned over the box of scrap metal beside him. Now that's out of the way, what kind of modifications do you want for your bow staff? Gwen blinked, caught off guard. You're seriously just switching gears like that? Yeah, Naruto shrugged, reaching into the box and pulling out a long scroll. It's not like the data we got was bad, a lot of it was actually really valuable. Could help Ben, maybe help us understand what we're dealing with. But, he trailed off as he started unsealing what was left of the dismantled robot, steam hissing as the tech was laid out neatly across the dock. It also paints a big fat target on our backs. He paused, glancing her way, so I'll think on it later. Right now I want to focus on something I can control, and besides, he nudged the box with his foot. I'm not built to just sit still. Gwen gave a slow nod, fair enough, but on the dock. PSH. I'm not gonna build an advanced weaponized bow staff here. I need at least 5 days before everything's done. He counted off on his fingers. Your staff. Something for Grandpa Max. A few things for myself. He turned to the scattered remains of the bot and gestured broadly. I mean, look at this. Alien tech just sitting in front of us, and I'm not gonna let it go to waste. There was something different in his voice. A buzz. A fire. His fingers twitched at his sides like he couldn't wait to start. For the first time all day, Gwen caught a genuine smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The kind that made her smile too, without really meaning to. You're kinda excited, she said quietly. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, slightly sheepish. Yeah. Engineering became my thing once I got here. Liked building stuff. Hacking systems. Downloading blueprints from sketchy forums. I wasn't book smart, not really, but I was hands-on. YouTube did the rest. Wait. Gwen narrowed her eyes. Did you just say hacking systems? He winced. That's not the part one wanted you to hear. You hacked the Pentagon on the weekend. It was just once. For a bet. Gwen rolled her eyes, but her smirk betrayed her amusement. No wonder you graduated early. Naruto leaned back on his palms. Yeah. College came fast. Left faster. I liked it though. Not the tests, but the labs. The people. Getting to build stuff that wasn't meant to kill you. You know, unless it failed the safety test. He sighed, the energy in him dipping just a bit. It sucks sometimes. Being out of it already. Feels like I skipped something I wasn't supposed to. Gwen was quiet, watching the reflection of the clouds shift across his laptop screen. Then he shook his head, like brushing dust off a thought, but hey, I've got alien scrap now. That's way more exciting. She gave a soft laugh, nudging his leg with her foot. So, what can you even make with that stuff? More like, what can't I make, he said, reaching for a chunk of joint plating. The bot had a full core, some intact claws, a few servos, stabilizers, and, oh, lasers. Lots of fun pointy crap. For your staff, he continued, I'm thinking something collapsible. Light. Laser tips on both ends, maybe. A shock feature if I can rig it. She raised a brow. That I'm listening. For Grandpa, maybe a shield from one of the legs. Something sturdy but light. Or maybe a shoulder blaster. Not sure he'd use it, but it's a cool backup. And for you? Gwen asked. Naruto scratched his chin. Most of it. But not in a selfish way. Just practical. He hasn't said anything yet, but I know Grandpa'd be somewhere between okay with it and ready to shut it down. Gwen, you were hesitant until now. So if I'm the only one using half this junk, I'm gonna make it count. He picked up the robot's head again and turned it over in his hands. I could use its CPU to make a kind of headset. Scanning system, like that Iron Man comic Ben always read. Detection, analysis, maybe a comlink. Gwen watched as he fell deeper into thought. His eyes flicking over parts like puzzle pieces arranging themselves. I could forge a sword out of the excess plating. Maybe kunai and shuriken too, metal that responds to my chakra. The core's dead but it still has enough framework to push and circulate energy if I tweak it. Could power all my gear. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again when she realized he wasn't talking to her anymore. He was just thinking. Locked in a loop of possibilities, minutes passed. Naruto? He blinked. Huh? You've been staring at that hunk of metal for like 10 minutes. Oh. He laughed lightly, rubbing the back of his head. My bad. Kinda zoned out. She smiled. You always get like this when your brain's moving a mile a minute? Only when I'm happy, he said without thinking, and for once, he didn't try to take it back. A few hours passed in a blur of metal, chatter, and possibilities. Naruto hadn't felt this eager to build in a long time. Every part Gwen asked about sparked 5 more ideas in his head: taser functions, counterweight balancing, heat insulation for the grip, and whether he could rig retractable settings without making it too bulky. She wanted something she could use without feeling like it would knock her off balance or get caught in her clothes. He listened more than he talked, which surprised even him. They sat cross-legged by the open scroll. Scrap parts gleaming under the rising sun. Sometimes Gwen pointed at a component and asked what it did, or what he could make it do. Other times she just gave a vague answer like something cool or something that won't break when I hit Ben with it, and let him brainstorm. It wasn't hard. The weird thing was, he wasn't just bouncing ideas around, he actually wanted her input. Wanted to get it right. As the sun reached its peak and the heat began to sink into the dock, Gwen finally declared, okay. Break time. We earned it. Naruto tilted his head. Break from what? You barely did anything. She smirked and stretched, arms high above her head. I helped you decode the language. No, you didn't. Doesn't matter. I claimed I did. That counts. Then she flopped back against a crate, kicking off her shoes and letting the lake breeze hit her face. Come on. Just relax for a bit. We'll get back to it. Naruto wanted to argue, but didn't. He wasn't really sure why. Anyone else, and he'd be halfway to the rust bucket by now, gear in hand. Maybe already half-built something, but with Gwen. It didn't feel like a waste of time, so he sat beside her. Let his eyes trail the shifting reflection of clouds in the water. Let the wind run through his hair and carried off the scent of pine and salt and oil. Neither of them talked much. Just sat in the silence, the kind that didn't feel awkward or empty. The dock creaked faintly beneath them. Gwen shifted, head tilting toward him. You know. This is nice. Naruto didn't respond. Not because he didn't agree, but because his eyes had locked on something in the distance. A faint ripple in the water, then came the boat horn. It cut across the lake in a deep, echoing blare, the same sound he'd heard earlier when Grandpa Max and Ben had taken off on that ridiculous lake tour. Gwen didn't even flinch. Probably just Ben again. Pulling another prank. But Naruto's gut twisted. That ripple he saw, it wasn't small. And it wasn't just the horn. Something was wrong. The surface of the water shifted again. He stood quickly, eyes narrowing. Gwen. HM? He turned just in time to see the shadow rise beneath the lake's surface. Big. Fast. Without a word, he scooped her up, arms around her back and under her legs, and launched them both off the dock with a hard kick. Hey, what the, Naruto? The dock behind them buckled with a deafening crack. A massive figure surged from the water, sending waves crashing in all directions. Spray misted over them as they landed hard on the opposite bank. Naruto crouched to absorb the impact before setting Gwen down beside him. She stood slowly, staring wide-eyed at the creature that had risen from the lake like a nightmare. It was huge. Towering. The thing buckled over most buildings along the shore, casting a long, shifting shadow. Its arms were thick and plated, too large for any real animal. A biometallic grill ran down the center of its head like an armored fin. Blue eyes glowed with an alien intensity, and from the back of its mouth extended strange, tubular mandibles, long and twitching like cables soaked in seawater. For a moment, the monster just stood there, the lake churning around its waist. Then it let out a roar that made the ground tremble. That's not Ben, Gwen whispered. No kidding, Naruto muttered, eyes still locked on the beast. So little bro had been right. There really was a sea monster out here. Naruto turned to her, quickly shifting into motion again. Stay here. I'm gonna help everyone get clear. Gwen nodded without argument, and without waiting another second, Naruto leapt off toward the shoreline, heart pounding, chakra already surging to his limbs. Time to work. By the time Naruto made it back near the shoreline, Ben was already in the thick of it. Out on the lake, a blur zipped across the water, fast, blue, and barely visible if you blinked. XLR-8's legs spun like a turbine, his sleek frame cutting across the surface of the lake with effortless speed. He was darting from half-sinking boats to frightened tourists, grabbing them with practiced ease and skimming them back to shore before vanishing again in a streak of blue light. Naruto watched for half a second, impressed. Ben made that speed look easy. Then he stepped forward onto the lake himself, chakra flowing down into his feet. The water shifted beneath his sandals, but held, as steady as stone. He took off, sprinting across the lake's surface, sending up splashes in his wake. Far ahead, the sea monster loomed, thick, wet limbs curling around the edge of a bobbing fishing boat like a cat toying with a mouse. Just as Naruto prepared to intervene, something made the creature pause. A second boat drifted past, sleeker, cleaner, probably expensive. The monster's head tilted slightly. Then it turned. It ignored the struggling fishing vessel and started drifting toward the shiny one like it was drawn in. Naruto raised an eyebrow mid-run. All right. So it's got taste. He didn't slow. XLR-8 zipped back to his side in a blur, keeping stride like a shadow. We stopping Big Ugly from hurting the friends of fish, he rasped in that fast-talking alien voice, teeth barely visible beneath his visor. Naruto glanced at him. Yeah. But who are the friends of fish? Ben gave a glitchy laugh. Long story. Naruto didn't waste breath pressing further. Instead, he reached deeper, building chakra into his legs, timing it with his next step. With a sharp crack of energy, he flash-stepped, vanishing from the water in a sudden surge of speed and reappearing yards ahead in a flicker of movement. Even XLR-8 blinked. Okay, that was cool. Naruto landed on the deck of the sleeker boat just in time to hear the monster screech and rise from the depths. It dragged its massive body half out of the water, thick limbs covered in wet, scale-like plating, dripping slime and lakeweed from its gnarled claws. Its shoulders hunched as it twisted its thick tail around. Naruto saw it coming. With barely a breath to spare, the tail snapped through the air, aiming to knock the entire boat into the lake. Naruto crouched. Not happening. He shot upward in a blur, flipping through the air before slamming his heel into the side of the creature's tail. The force cracked through it like a shockwave, blasting water outward as the tail recoiled with a sharp snap. Splashing hard into the lake, the creature screamed again, pulling back slightly, eyes flaring. Naruto dropped onto the deck of the boat, crouched and breathing steady. That thing was big, not quite summon tier, but still bigger than most of the towers around the lake. It loomed high, at least 30-40 feet tall, the tentacle-like mandibles at the back of its mouth writhing like hoses under pressure. It didn't belong here. None of this did. Before it could act again, a sudden cyclone of water spun up between it and the boat. XLR-8, Ben zipped around the monster in tight, dizzying circles, kicking up a miniature water tornado to create distance. The creature howled again. Flinching back from the spray, "Nice one," Naruto muttered, giving Ben a nod as the blur of blue zipped back beside him. For a second, the chaos died down, then, with the sound of rushing water and shredding metal, the sea beast reappeared, this time at the rear of the boat. Its massive frame surged up from beneath like a nightmare reborn. With one great lurch, it reached over the edge of the deck and ripped the tarp off a long, tied-down crate. It bared its mandibles, those twitching, tube-like limbs, and latched onto the box, dragging it closer with a guttural hiss. "What is it doing?" Naruto muttered. Before either brother could move, one of the men aboard lunged toward the crate. Trying to save it, XLR-8 moved first. He zipped past the man in a blue flash, snatched the crate away from the monster's grasp and hurled it back toward the center of the boat, sending it skidding safely across the deck. The man staggered back. Naruto caught him by the collar and shoved him toward safety. "Get below deck. Now." Then he turned toward the monster. "All right," Naruto muttered. "You wanna go, let's go." He stepped forward, separating his chakra into its refined halves, drawing on the spiritual as water from the lake whipped up around him. His palm glowed, a Rasengan formed, then grew. Water spiraled tighter and tighter around the core of the jutsu until it pulsed with churning. Dense energy. By the time it was fully formed, it was the size of a small boulder, swirling like a hurricane caught in a sphere. He didn't hesitate. Naruto launched himself toward the monster, wind and water rushing behind him, and slammed the Rasengan straight into the creature's chest. The explosion rocked the lake. Water erupted around them in a blinding column as the monster shrieked in pain, thrown backward into the depths. It vanished beneath the surface with a churning roar, sending foamy ripples across the lake as it retreated. Naruto landed back on the boat with a thud, letting the last of the water fall from his hand, breath heavy but even. Silence fell over the lake. A few seconds later, Ben jogged over, already shifting back from XLR-8, looking toward the man who had risked everything for the crate. "What was in there?" Ben asked, voice flat. "You almost got eaten trying to save it." The man rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Our lunches." Naruto turned his head slowly. "You risked your life. For sandwiches. They were really good pastrami, unbelievable." Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose, about to launch into a full-blown rant when a beep 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 broke the moment. He looked up, the Omnitrix was blinking on Ben's chest. Naruto let his hand drop, groaning inwardly. "I'm starting to hate that sound." Ben gave a shrug. "I'll go check on the other boats, people are still freaking out." Ben vanished in a blur of speed, obviously trying to make it back to the dock against his timer. Naruto stared after him for a second, then turned back to the crate. fully intact, something felt off, but he just sighed, and then, he took off again, toward the dock, the screams, and the chaos having died down. The night had crept in fast, what little light remained clung to the lake's surface like oil, slow and heavy. The trees rustled every so often, more restless than the people still huddled around Max's fire. The attack had cleared most of them out, campers packed up early, rangers trying not to look rattled. But some stayed behind. Naruto didn't like that part. He stood off to the side, arms folded, watching a set of dark shapes drift near the far end of the lake. No lights. No motion. Just boats that didn't leave when they should have. Still. Patient, too patient, he didn't trust it. Didn't trust them. Not after what he and Ben saw under the water. Kraken attack confirmed, Ben said behind him, half wrapped in a towel, hair dripping onto his shoulders. I think that earns me at least one. You were right. Max didn't even glance at him. You and Shaw may have been right, don't let it go to your head. Ben scoffed, sitting on the cooler near the fire. You're seriously still on this? You saw it. Everyone saw it. I'm not denying the Kraken. Max stirred the fire with a stick, the embers glowing brighter. I'm saying I still don't trust Shaw. And I don't want you around him anymore. That hit different. Ben's posture straightened just a little. Why? His tone wasn't defensive. Just tired. Tired of being treated like he hadn't grown. You really think he's some kind of criminal mastermind? Max didn't answer immediately. No. I think he's the kind of guy you meet at a gas station off the highway, who somehow knows your name and asks too many questions about your car. Naruto glanced sideways at that. The too many secrets, not enough sanity type. Max nodded. Exactly. Ben looked between them, clearly weighing whether to push it. He seemed more obsessed than shady, honestly. Naruto shrugged. Sometimes there's not much of a difference. Even so, he already knew how this was going to go. It was half an hour later when Naruto spotted Ben heading toward the dock again. He didn't call out. Just followed, quiet, steady, hands in his jacket pockets. He caught up just as Ben stepped onto Shaw's boat. No one else in sight. The lake was darker now, the sky cloudy, moonlight threading through in thin slivers. You knew I'd come, Ben said, not surprised at all, I figured. Naruto kept his voice even. Didn't feel like letting you board a stranger's boat alone. Especially not this stranger. Shaw's voice came from the helm. Figured one of you might show up again. He turned, still in that ratty vest and oil-stained hat, and looked them over like a man who hadn't decided if they were guests or problems. You sticking around or planning to toss me overboard? Ben spoke first. We just want to help. You were right, remember? Shaw grunted. Yeah, and now it's about time I prove it beyond grainy footage and panic. I'm going in. He pulled on a scuba suit with the kind of motion that said he'd done this 100 times. Reached for a harpoon gun like it was second nature. This your dive buddy? Naruto asked, eyebrow raised. Only one I trust not to panic when the Kraken shows up. He strapped the gear, didn't wait for a reply, and slipped off the side of the boat like a shadow vanishing beneath the surface. Underwater, it was colder than Naruto expected. The light was distant, but not gone. A dull green haze filtered from the surface above, and all sound was swallowed by the pressure. They descended fast. Shaw was already ahead of them, scanning the deep with his harpoon cocked tight against his chest. Ben moved in close. Naruto's eyes never left the old man's hands. Then, it shifted. The water darkened as something massive passed above, just the edge of it, the shape distorted, and then they saw it, not the Kraken. Not this time, a nest, or something close. Half buried in stone, framed in strands of lakeweed. An egg. Yellowed and thick-shelled, with faint patterns across its surface that pulsed like veins. Ben stared at it. Naruto felt his gut tighten. They didn't need words to know what it meant. when they broke the surface again, Shaw hauled himself up first. Naruto stayed low in the water, hand on Ben's chest to stop him. Another boat was alongside Shaw's now, black, quiet, unfamiliar. Too quiet, then came the voices, bit late for a swim, isn't it? A masked figure leaned over the edge. Lake diving's dangerous. Unless you weren't alone. Shaw's voice was dry. Don't have friends. Not surprising, the masked man said, waving to his team. Hold him. Naruto's eyes narrowed. They weren't just divers. These guys moved like professionals. Military. Corporate, wrong, the lead man stepped closer. Removing his mask, Ben muttered under his breath. Jonah. Naruto exhaled through his nose. So that's who was behind this. Jonah crouched beside Shaw, voice calm. We don't want anything from you. Just answers. I didn't see anything. Jonah smiled. Then you won't mind if we check your memory the hard way. Naruto was about to move. His hand tensed. Ben stopped him with a glance, Omnitrix glowing red, out of power. Naruto bit back a curse. They had to wait. Just a little longer. Jonah waved his crew to the other boat. We'll take him back to the Canery. Figure out what he knows. We'll come back for the egg later. Mini-subs prepped. That made Naruto flinch, they knew. And they had tech no local group should have had, high grade, sleek, fast. As they boarded, one of the masked men tossed a blinking square onto Shaw's boat. Ben blinked. Is that bomb? Naruto said flatly. High-tech, old model. Black market special. The boat pulled away. Naruto grabbed Ben and yanked them both down just before the explosion went off. Heat. Water. The muffled crack of wood and flame, debris rained as they resurfaced. Gasping for air, Ben looked down at the Omnitrix. Green again, he smirked. Looks like it's hero time. Naruto just raised an eyebrow, water dripping from his hair. That took you long enough. With a shimmer of green light, Ben's body distorted and shifted, spindly limbs stretched outward. Sleek black carapace replacing skin as 4 translucent wings snapped out from his back. His face elongated into an insectoid mask, eyes bulging large and milky blue. When the light faded, Stinkfly hovered where Ben had been, his wings buzzing with a high-pitched drone that made Naruto's ears twitch. All right, Ben said, his voice now a wet, gurgling rasp through alien vocal cords. Try not to barf when we bank. Naruto gave a quick scoff but didn't argue. He leapt lightly onto Stinkfly's back, crouched low to avoid throwing off balance. Just don't get us killed. Stinkfly zipped forward, wings humming as they carved a sharp line through the sky. Below them, the company's sleek military-style boat tore through the lake, clearly not some standard fishing vessel. It churned waves into the dark water as it tried to outrun them, but it was pointless. Ben narrowed his eyes. They've got nowhere to go. He shouted down toward the boat. It's over. You're not getting away with this. A burst of gunfire cut through the night. Ben jerked midair, wings twisting hard to the right as bullets zipped past. Okay, rude. Naruto gripped tighter, already channeling chakra into his feet to stay steady. You think they're the friendly type now? Ben didn't answer. Instead, he retaliated. Stinkfly's bug-like eyes glowed green before releasing thick, mucus-like strands of acidic goop. The substance hit the boat with a wet splat, pinning 2 of the shooters flat against the hull as they struggled beneath the gunk. But Jonah, Naruto's eyes scanned, wasn't among them. Before they could close in, several small barrels were tossed overboard. Bright red. Metallic. Drifting. What the hell? Naruto started, then one exploded. The blast threw heat and lake water in every direction, forcing Ben to veer upward. Another detonated just beneath them, the pressure nearly folding Stinkfly's wings, their minds. Ben yelled, trying to climb higher. You believe these guys? The next explosion hit close, too close. a tree on the lakeside cracked and fell, the force sending it toppling into the water with a splash big enough to drench them both. One of Stinkfly's wings took the full brunt, suddenly. They weren't flying anymore. Ben's flailing limbs struggled to stay upright as they dipped, Naruto already shifting his weight. "We're going down." They splashed hard, Naruto catching Stinkfly and pulling him up before he could sink. As the boat looped around again like a predator circling its prey, Naruto shifted fast. "Hang on," he said, hefting Ben over his shoulder. The bug alien was heavier than he looked. Then Naruto sprinted, feet smacking onto the surface of the lake, chakra keeping him above water. He darted forward, weaving between sprays of gunfire, every breath tense. "How long till your wings dry?" he shouted over his shoulder. "I don't know." Ben groaned, his voice still in that gurgled alien pitch. "You wanna borrow a towel mid-firefight?" Another shot ricocheted off the water nearby. Naruto ducked, twisting mid-step. "Wouldn't say no." As the boat circled for a tighter shot, Naruto pivoted to the side, heart pounding. Just before another volley could connect, a strand of green slime shot from Stinkfly's mouth, latching onto a half-submerged tree limb. With one hard pull, they both launched into the air and landed roughly on the branch, out of the line of fire for now. The boat passed. For the moment, they'd lost them. Ben started flapping his wings, droplets spraying off. Okay. We're good. You're not a bad pack mule, by the way. Next time," Naruto said dryly. "You get to run while I nap." Ben buzzed his wings, rising unsteadily. "All aboard." Naruto climbed back on. They flew low and fast, scanning until they spotted a floating figure in the water, Captain Shaw, arms weakly paddling to stay afloat. Ben dipped, groaning from the weight as Naruto grabbed the man by the collar and hauled him up. "You weigh a lot less than I expected," Naruto muttered to Shaw as they climbed altitude. Shaw coughed, but didn't argue. By the time they approached the camp, the sky had deepened into a purple blue. The lake shimmered beneath them, silent now, as if none of the chaos had happened. The Rust Bucket's RV lights glowed warm and dim against the dusk. Max must have set up camp. As they got close, Naruto heard it, the familiar warning sound of the Omnitrix. Red flashes pulsed from Stinkfly's chest. "Oh no," Ben muttered, flapping harder, but right before they touched down, the flash triggered. Green light surged, and Stinkfly's body collapsed midair, shrinking, limbs retracting, wings vanishing. Ben turned human again. Ah. Shaw and Ben both crashed into the makeshift tarp Max had strung up earlier, cushioning the fall with a loud groan. Naruto wasn't so lucky. He hit grass with a solid thud, his breath escaping in a loud grunt. Stars blinked in his vision. He laid there a second, staring up at the darkening sky as his lungs fought for air. "Yeah," he rasped. "I really hate that sound." The wind off the lake still clung to their skin as Ben and Naruto stood before the others, water drying in patches on their clothes. Shaw had taken a seat near the edge of the camp, still wringing out his coat, while Max crossed his arms, concern lining his face. "It wasn't attacking just to attack," Ben said, voice steady but hoarse from exhaustion. "It was protecting something, eggs." Naruto nodded, eyes flicking to the lake. "It didn't go after us until we got close to the nest. The creature's maternal. Not aggressive. Unless provoked. Provoked by people like Jonah," Ben added, arms gesturing toward Shaw. "He said they called themselves Friends of Fish." Gwen scoffed, her tablet already in hand. "There's no organization by that name. I checked." She looked up, her eyes sharp. "But I did find something on Jonah Melville." Naruto turned to her. "That name again." "Poacher," Gwen continued. "Not just any kind. He traffics exotic species, endangered ones. Sells them to collectors. Government's been after him for years but he keeps slipping through cracks. Probably pays off the right people." Naruto's expression darkened. "That crate we saw on the company boat. He must have had one of the eggs." Ben's jaw tightened. So what, he was gonna sell it? He was gonna steal a mother's kid, Naruto said coldly. It was all Max needed to hear. They took Shaw's backup boat, cutting across the water toward the only structure still standing in the lake's far corner, a rust-red fish cannery, long defunct, now humming with illegal life. The building jutted out over the water like a crooked finger, supported by old beams that dipped into the lake. A wide steel ladder reached from the dock to a grated catwalk above. The boat drifted in under the building's shadow, engines killed. Naruto stood first, water droplets sliding down his arms. He stared up at the looming structure, silent. "We go in quiet," he finally said. "Max, Gwen, you're with me." "Ben." The younger brother nodded, already tightening the dial on the Omnitrix. "Take care of the friends of fish." "Got it." The device lit up, neon green burning through mist and cloud. With a flash and a hiss of energy, Ben's body twisted and stretched, limbs elongating, skin smoothing into slick green scales. He let out a deep breath, gills flaring open as translucent fins unfolded along his arms and spine. His mouth split into a toothy maw, eyes narrowing under a bioluminescent glow, ripped jaws. He dove into the water without a word, vanishing beneath the surface like a missile. Naruto barely had time to track the ripples before he turned to the ladder. The inside of the cannery was a metallic maze, rows of long-forgotten machinery now serving as cover for crates with no markings. Conveyor belts hung suspended like skeletal arms, and high above, mechanical hooks still creaked along rusted tracks, some of them swaying with recent use. Naruto moved up front, every sense alert. Gwen and Max flanked behind him, eyes scanning for movement. Then the walls trembled, just slightly, like a deep rumble passing through steel. "That's not good," Gwen whispered. Naruto frowned. "Hopefully Ben," he muttered, but he didn't believe it. They moved deeper. Footsteps silent. Then, "Stop right there." A poacher emerged from the shadows, gun drawn. Naruto didn't blink. He shifted forward and swept the man's legs in one move, his palm catching the barrel and twisting it from the man's hand. A swift roundhouse to the jaw sent the poacher crumpling to the floor. Naruto exhaled once, sharp. "Keep moving." But another poacher was already behind him, gun aimed at the back of his head, down. Max's voice. Gwen leapt forward, catching a nearby hook. In one swift swing, she collided with the poacher midair while Max barreled into him from behind. The gun clattered away, and Naruto ducked instinctively. They kept going, deeper into the structure, until they hit the end. A wide glass panel overlooked the lake beyond, where the horizon had gone dark. They saw it all at once, through fog, water spray, and steel silhouettes. Jonah stood knee-deep in the shallows in a reinforced sun suit. The bulky exoskeleton was made for pressure resistance, chrome-plated, with tanky legs and thick arms that ended in clamp-like claws. One of those claws was holding a capsule. Inside, 2 shimmering eggs. Ben was already there, locked in a desperate struggle with the suit. The Kraken's massive form circled just beneath, confused, enraged. The water boiled from movement. Naruto's scowl tightened. "They're dropping into the lake," Gwen said, horror in her voice. Naruto didn't wait. He climbed to the edge of the window and dove, cold hit like a punch to the ribs. The pressure was immediate, but he adjusted with chakra, forcing it to his limbs as he kicked downward. Jonah and Ripjaws were in a brutal struggle, Ben's claws scraping at the arms of the suit, trying to wrench the capsule free. Jonah let the container go, deliberately, before slugging Ben in the chest with both mechanical fists. Ben slammed into the lake bed, stunned. Naruto surged forward, grabbing for the eggs, but something massive rammed into him sideways. His vision spun. He tumbled backward and barely caught himself. The Kraken. Her massive eye fixed on him. She didn't know they were trying to help. She only saw threats. Naruto dodged a lashing tentacle and flipped away, surfacing briefly for breath. He inhaled and gasps, coughing. Damn. Then he dove again. Jonah was already after the eggs. Naruto kicked down with renewed fury. Ben recovered, swimming in from the side, his form flickering as he shifted shape mid-swim, legs transforming into a long fin tail. He bit into Jonah's suit arm, metal screeching under pressure. Jonah swung him away again. Naruto launched 2 shadow clones. One collided with Jonah's back, the other used the momentum to rocket Naruto forward. They hit him in tandem, Ben clawing, Naruto kicking. Jonah still clutched the capsule, then, suddenly, he let go, again, just long enough to slam both suit arms into them. Naruto felt the shock rattle his bones. His chakra flared in panic as he and Ben hit the lake floor, hard. The pressure crushed in. Air fled his lungs, he grunted. Move. Breathe. Move, Ben lashed out with a chain from his wrist, tangling one of Jonah's arms and slamming him into the seabed. Naruto used the gap to swim upward, bursting into air. He coughed violently, then, grit in his teeth, he dove again. This time he didn't stop. He landed on Jonah from above, pummeling down with full weight. The suit sparked on impact, and Naruto formed a Rasengan, spiraling energy glowing even underwater. He shoved it into the joint of Jonah's torso plate. It detonated with a dull boom. The suit cracked open. Naruto grabbed the man by his collar and ripped him free. Ben, beside him, had already secured the eggs. He clutched the capsule to his chest as he kicked toward the glowing nest far below. The Kraken hovered in the murk, massive and wary, but her body language had changed. She didn't attack, not this time. Naruto watched Ben lower the eggs gently into the nest, the flickering glow returning to calm. The sea creature curled around them protectively, no longer thrashing, no longer crying out. The battle was over. Jonah Melville floated unconscious in Naruto's grasp, and this time, the lake was silent. That's it for today. I hoped you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and comment ideas if you can, and maybe you could share this with your friends, because you never know, they might like what ifs too. So without further ado, All Kage, out.